Facebook. Listen, before on Facebook, I wasn't able to see how many people logged on. Now I see there's about 7-10 people who have logged on. Say hello to me. Hello to you. Please like and share the video. If you the video, it's even better for us because wow, they say it gets the algorithm where you're gonna see my post more often if it's wowed. So when you wow my post, it'll be there on Facebook, on YouTube. You can just have to like the content and share the video. Definitely helps us out a lot. If you don't have a Cash App to buy me some coffee, thank you very much. How we doing, my people? Over here, waiting on some more people to log on to YouTube, since YouTube is the main place. Just want to say thank you to the people on Facebook who log on. I know some of you guys just browse and then you leave. Totally fine with us. But YouTube is the place where people enjoy the content and they stay on until we finish. That's just the case. That's just what happens all the time. And there's no lag time. I opened up, I refreshed my computer, restarted it, but definitely enjoying. I think you guys will see me perfectly today. Can't wait to get started in this conversation of what credit monitoring to talk about. Anyways, let's call my partner John and we get into the conversation ASAP. Thank you so much for okay.
Hello,
John.
Yeah.
What's up? What's up? How's your day?
Good. You?
How's your oil prices going?
Oh man, that was tough. It was a tough for anybody that had that March contract. It was a tough day.
I know.
It doesn't, and you know what? It doesn't expire till tomorrow. So,
so I heard it was negative. I thought it negative.
It's closed. Yeah, I mean it closed negative $38, $37.
We'll get into that conversation if you know what that means. So
I know exactly what that means. I can explain it in very clear, concise understanding.
We'll get into it in a few because I don't want the people to leave. They came here already. They know what they're in for. And I was going to call you before and tell you I want you to go in on this podcast because of the conversation that we had with that customer who was just a pain, who didn't know. But I know that time has passed.
Which one? From last week?
Yeah, the brother, the guy from Jersey, Spanish guy, the Verizon guy.
Right.
I'm pretty sure he doesn't watch our content. They found me on Instagram.
But even if he did, it's not we're saying anything bad. And at the end of the day, he knew when he got off the phone after he realized that the accounts were removed that he was absolutely wrong. So it's an emotional experience for a lot of people, right? And some people get way more caught up in their emotions than they should. And although we discount for the understanding that there's the one-off here and there, there's still a level of respect that has to exist, right?
Yes.
Or else you can't function. And we weren't even dealing with him. Specifically, we're dealing with his sister until he just kind of creeped up out of nowhere. So he creeped up and went right back. So I mean, once he saw that we removed the accounts, as he should have, because he wasn't even our point of contact. So
let's walk it back, because I want people to fully get the understanding, because they go to these websites, and I believe that they, from the people who contact us and all the credit monitorings we see that a lot of people choose the credit monitoring that is going to be more in favoring for them, as far as the higher the credit score, this is the best credit monitoring, or the less negative accounts they see, this is the best credit monitoring, and they swear by it. So I just want to go back into the thinking of this customer. If you could tell the story of how this whole situation started. And this whole situation started because the customer didn't actively do the intake call with us, so he could see how we do our work, how we do what we do and what expectations he's going to have. On top of that, we kind of deviated in taking this customer as a customer because we only worked on one account. Okay. Normally,
we don't ever do that.
Normally, we never do that because it just creates problems. But we saw the situation.
But not only, hold on, I don't interrupt you, but it's clear. Not only does it only create problems, but it doesn't do the only reason we did in this particular case, because there was an instance between stuff of him and his sister who is enlisted us, that something needed to come off the report specifically just to alleviate tension between the two of them, right? So that was the purpose we did. Typically speaking, though, removing one account of a swath does absolutely nothing, right? It doesn't, especially with the way the economy is right now and everything. It's not going to get you any closer to where you want to be, and therefore it's useless. In this case, it was strategic because they needed to do it for a particular purpose, and it made sense, right? Most people are these two accounts. I don't care about these other 6, but remove these 2 because I'm sure that there's a lot of points there. Unfortunately, number 1, you're wrong, and number 2, it's not getting you any closer to where you want to be. Because whether you got 2, whether you have 4 negatives or 6 total negatives, you're still going to get rated on credit. You're still going to pay higher interest. And if you're going to pay for a service, you might as well pay for the full service. I mean, you don't like. I was speaking to a client today, and I had said about the conversation I had was, when you take your car and get fixed, you don't do so with just the idea that you can drive it, out of the auto mechanic shop and get it home. You want to be able to actually use it going forward, right? You don't want to have to worry about it breaking down on you after that. So in order to do it, you got to do it right. I mean, I don't understand the philosophy when you're dealing with something like credit to try and shortcut things. I just don't get that. Yes. This is your credit. I mean, for a lot of people, that's the biggest asset you're going to have. So why would you want to shortcut it? Take all these chances working with companies that'll do it for cheap, and then potentially in the back of your head that that's probably not the right thing, and it's probably not going to get you where you want to be. And then when you realize it's not the right thing, and it's not going to get you where you want to be, then you end up being like, oh, you know what, I knew better. But you could have made the decision in advance because you knew it already, right? So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just it's unnecessary. In this case, the only reason we worked on it was because it was a strategic situation. But going forward with what happened, we submitted all 3 bureaus as we typically do with the initial round. We submitted it online.
Correct.
And what happens is a lot of people like to use Creditkarma because it's free. Okay, it's literally, you can sign up in a blink, which is obviously they do that for a reason, and people love it because in some cases you're going to see the score a lot higher than you typically would. So people love that, right? It gives them a psychological mirage that at some point in time, they can look at their credit and it can show a 600 when in reality it's probably in the high 4s, right? So in this particular instance, what Creditkarma doesn't explain to people, though, is that when accounts go into dispute, see, going back since the beginning of these monitoring sites when they started,
correct,
they all respond differently to open account disputes, okay? Back in the day when it was Creditkarma, Creditkarma was real big back, 2010, 2011, 2012. Back then, people love Creditkarma because when you put accounts in dispute, effectively the way their formula they'd set up through the platform, it was as if the accounts weren't on the report. So you'd see your score skyrocket as a result of the opening of the disputes. People love that, right? Correct. So they get to see the report and they'd be like, oh, the accounts must be off, when they weren't off. But they would love to. So everybody loved going to Creditkarma because accounts would go in dispute. You'd see the scores jump up, and then when the dispute finished, the problem with that is when the dispute finished, if you didn't get them all off, you'd see the score scale back down, right?
Yeah.
So it would scale back down, and it would still give you a bump, though, for any accounts you got off, and you'd have to continue to go on. The problem is Creditkarma does the opposite. So what happens is when accounts go in dispute, they dump your score. They dump it. So they'll dump it. They'll extract it. In a lot of cases, you'll see 70, 80, 90 points. People are like, why did they just drop 70, 90 points? And they'll lose their minds because they don't know, because there's no explanation there. The only reason we know is because this is what I do every single day, right?
Correct.
The only reason, and most people that look at it every day don't know. In this particular case, this particular gentleman, he called us up, and then the email that he sent it through his sister, and he said, my brother says, I don't know why he didn't reach out directly, but he used his sister, I don't know. But he said, my brother said the score dropped. I said, listen, if you're using a real site, that shouldn't be the case. Real meaning Experian, something like that. You're not going to see those adjustments.
And we always say, what site is this on? Because It keeps
right,
happening.
because I know when I see the exacerbated comments, it's very easy to identify because Credit Karma, the way the formula is set up, which again, I just want to be clear, is not a formula you're ever going to see in any walk of life.
Well, someone just said right now, is it Credit Karma uses Vantage Score or is it the same as FICO, right? He had that question. I told him we were going to get into it.
Right. So I don't think he uses either one. I'm almost 100% sure that it doesn't use the Vantage or a FICO score, and which is why you don't see it anywhere. But I'll go for. Let me go forward. So he emails her and says that his score dropped like 30 points or something like that. And I said, listen, we're removing one account. This particular guy had like 7 negatives on each bureau. We were just removing one. I said, look, if your score dropped, chances are it's not our accounts. I wasn't aware because he wasn't forwarding us everything he was supposed to, and the time hadn't hit yet that I said, well, our accounts are still in dispute. So chances are it's not from us. But have your brother reach out if he has any questions, and we'd be happy to take a look and clarify the confusion. And he wrote an email that was a little bit to the left, had a little bit of attitude, and then that's where the whole conversation.
The email had a little bit attitude, and now. Before people go somewhere else with this and try to see that, try to say that, we too sensitive or something like that.
No. That's not. I don't think that's the way it's going to come across. It was a little bit of an attitude, but it is what it is.
Well, the thing about it is that people think they're talking to me when they send an email.
Well, I mean, in some cases they are talking to you, but in a lot of cases during the day, I'm the one getting back to a lot of the emails, because you're doing the front end stuff, and I'll be handling a lot of emails.
But on the front end, John, my job is, promote, be a nice person, educate people on the process and everything. But yet, I'm gonna get an email that is condescending, kind of demanding, kind of disrespectful.
No. Listen, what he ended up being frustrated about was the fact that I guess maybe he didn't want his sister to know that he had 6 other negatives on there, and that this one was just a small modicum of a much broader thing because it had been a fairly significant point between the two of them. That's why we were removing it. But whatever the case, he came back with a little bit of attitude, and we wrote back, look, it was a very clear and listen. Look, like I said before, we're almost 10,000 clients into this. Things happen. Communication gets confused over email. He wrote back and said, I think things are getting confused over email. Can we try and talk on the phone? And we got on the phone, and he basically, his understanding of
assuming Jay,
his understanding of Credit Karma, he thought Credit Karma was the best site that has ever existed, and he had basically formulated his own opinion on just about everything based on Credit Karma, and we had to literally dismantle that piece by piece, brick by brick. And it took like a 45-minute conversation. And it culminated with me having to send over to him the accounts being removed, or one of the bureaus that he was in, that he was concerned about, which was TransUnion, the actual account being removed. So it couldn't have been from us. And what I found out when I had to go in and troubleshoot, because it literally took 4 hours out of the day, because I kept being like, well, it can't be this because of this. It can't be this because of this. So finally at the end, I'm like, look, I knew it was right the entire time. It wasn't the question. It was trying to get it through to his brain that he was wrong, which some people are just very difficult to penetrate. And in this case, we sent it over and he understood, and he whatever, he was appreciative, etc. That being said, the moral of this entire story is just the degree and the amount of confusion that comes with Credit Karma. People don't understand why. What you'll see on Credit Karma is you'll see in a typical scoring model, when your credit usage goes from 0%, your cumulative unsecured credit usage, meaning all your credit card limits against all your credit card balance, when it goes from 0 to 100% on any file on a typical scoring site, typical meaning, for instance, Experian, the total amount of points that should comprise is anywhere from 35 to 40 points total per bureau. Okay, if you're on Credit Karma, if your credit usage happens to increase 20 or 30%, it'll dump your score 60 points. That is unfathomable. I mean, that is outlandish. So people, it has people on the edge of their seat trying to monitor their score through Credit Karma, thinking that it's just this volatile commodity-driven stock market price that just continues to go up, dropping. Imagine. I mean, again, I tell people not to use this. I don't even like going on it in regards. I'll do it for people just to price things out to make it easier, but I refuse to use it as a reference. I do understand it.
Let people understand that if you want a quote for credit repair, we would look at your free Credit Karma account. But if you get in the process of doing credit repair with us, we will tell you to delete it from your phone.
Yeah, but nobody does. They keep going back and looking at it, and we always go back and say, listen. And I honestly, when clients will write, say, my score dropped 30 points. Or actually, you'll see a much more significant. I'll be like, well, the score dropped 90 points. I'll be like, it has to be Credit Karma, because the only thing that would cause a 90-point drop, right? Even if you had a new negative account, your file would have to have one account on it in order for your score to drop 90 points. If you had a reasonably average size file, if you go late on an account, more than likely, depending on which account it is, it's going to drop probably 60, 70 points for the first 30-day late. That's just what it is. So when you start seeing, drops above that, which is almost status quo for Credit Karma, it's just because the formula is so unique. You guys got to understand why it's free. It's free, right? It's free. So tell me another thing that exists that's free other than this knowledge that we give on these podcasts, right?
Correct.
I mean, there's not anything of substance that's free. So you ask yourself, how do they make money? Well, they make money because they knew by offering it free, they accumulate everybody's information. They sell information. Go ahead and look in the thing that you signed up for. When you signed up for Credit Karma, yes, they accumulate your information. Yes, they sell it. Yes, they make a lot of money on that. They also make a ton of money on them pairing you with open credit. And it's actually very good at pairing people with open credit. That's why they make a ton of their money. So let's just say you go through their site and you open up an American Express card, they get paid commission on that. But when you have 150 million people, which I think is roughly the amount of people they have on that site signed up, and each one gets a loan or a credit, that money starts to add up, which is why Credit Karma just got sold recently for some ridiculous amount of money. So, I mean, for that being said, all the reasons...
That was a good hustle, Jay.
What's that?
Credit Karma was a good hustle.
It's a great... Listen, I think that for the people that formulated it...
Yeah.
I think it's obviously largely misleading, right? It doesn't explain anything, but why would you want to explain things when you have people coming in hand over fist and you make a bulk of your money selling information, right? So if you make, let's just say for argument's sake, and they're private companies, so they don't release their finances, but let's just say for argument's sake, they make, and this is I'm lowballing this, but let's just say they make 55% of their income selling information, right? And let's say they make the other 45% from paying with credit. I mean, why would you want people to know what you're doing? Why would you want to give people information? Why would you explain anything? The more people you can draw in and not explain the formula that you're providing, the more people that are going to fall in love with it, because it's typically off. Anybody that is on it, which a lot of people are, they just do it as a point of reference. Some people understand it. Some people actually believe in it, like the guy we were just referencing earlier. In any instance, people know that there's a very real deviation between a true hard pull and whatever you see on that site. The amount that people see is going to deviate. The amount that people are going to believe it deviates depends on how interested they are in the site. But the reality is it can deviate rather exponentially. And I think just for that reason, people should be skeptical, right? There shouldn't be that much of a deviation. But the moves that you see and the confusion that stems from it is where the concern comes from. And it leaves people in a really, really confused state of mind. And I think, a lot of these monitoring sites already are confusing for people because they don't understand what's going on. But when you get into one like that that's free and draws in hundreds of millions of people, and you have that degree of confusion where you're seeing, a credit increase of 20% and the score dumps 60 points, that's not real life.
John, there's people that I know that are mortgage brokers, and they'll say, send me your Credit Karma information so I can review and let you know.
Yeah, but that doesn't, listen, no disrespect to anybody that's a mortgage broker, no disrespect to anybody that does mortgages, but just because you have a license to do mortgages does not mean you understand credit. That's like an electrician knowing how to do a plumber's work, right? Granted, they need that conduit of the credit report in order to be able to do their job. I'd say 75% of them don't know what they're looking at. And they make suggestions that are wrong. I see it at the branch level of banks all the time. They're constantly promoting people to open up secured credit cards and do ridiculous things because they're selling product, right? And they're trying. Somebody comes in there to a bank and their credit isn't good. Of course, they're going to tell you to open a credit card. They're trying to monetize everybody that walks in the door, right? They're trying to do everything they can. When you're a mortgage broker, those guys are doing what they think is right. Unfortunately, they just don't know what's right in a lot of cases. They're just giving their opinion based on their own personal knowledge. I don't know. I know a very close associate of mine that we send we send a lot of clients to on the mortgage side. He's a direct lender. They have branches all over the country, right?
Yeah.
And they do a significant amount of volume, right? Now,
Yeah.
I know for a fact that none of these brokerages, now he's not a broker, he's an actual direct lender, but I know none of them do like credit tutorials. They don't teach these people how to read credit reports. So therefore, if you're taking credit advice from a mortgage broker, you're taking advice from some guy's personal opinion, which more than likely is derived from credit boards. The same misinformation we're constantly trying to dispel within the context of these casts and stuff. The same just average misunderstanding of how things should be, right? And why wouldn't they say use Credit Karma? They don't know that Credit Karma doesn't work. So, and if it allows them to at least look at a score, and if somebody's in the general vicinity, we're like, yeah, we'll give it a shot, right? Because they still have to do a hard pull anyway if you're a mortgage guy. So, look, again, it's very important for people to embolden themselves with the knowledge rather than taking somebody else's opinion, right? And I mean, granted, I know we're giving our opinion right now,
Yes.
but most of the people that are paying attention have been following us for a period of time. But we've helped, or somebody that we've helped told them about it, so that they're able to substantiate that we know what we're talking about, right? We're not some random guy on the street that I just ran into that's telling you all these things you got to do your credit report, which none of them make sense, and they don't make sense to you when he's saying it, but he's saying it with conviction, so you think he knows what he's talking about, right?
Correct.
So under no circumstance would I tell people to use Credit Karma, but if you are going to use Credit Karma, just know what its shortfalls are, right? Be aware of it. Just use it as a way, because honestly, even the alerts that Credit Karma provides are wrong. I mean, just factually wrong. I mean, they send fictitious alerts. So part of the argument we had with the guy we referenced earlier was the fact that he got an alert that related to something related to his TransUnion. There was nothing wrong with his TransUnion. An account just came off his TransUnion, but they gave him a misleading alert too. So this is what I'm saying. There's a lot of smoke surrounding it, and most people, that's their go-to because it's free, and they don't realize that Experian has a free credit report. Correct. Equifax has a free credit report now. So, I mean, there's legitimate, and Experian's even comes with a score, right? Experian free credit report comes with a credit score too. So you're getting an actual score, a free report, and a free score. Now, granted, it only shows you one, but Credit Karma only shows you two, and both of them are faulty. So why not just go with one that's functional? I mean, if you're comfortable with two that don't really, translate to a real scoring model or a real score that you're ever going to see, why not go with the one? And if you haven't worked on it, they're all going to be pretty darn close as far as the depth of the report itself. Use the one that actually works, and the scoring model is much more indicative and much more similar to an actual FICO score, which is what Experian.
What do you say to people who review their credit files in 4 different credit monitoring sites, and they pay like $15 a month for each?
That's crazy, and it's unnecessary, because why would you need to do that? See, here's the problem, right? And some people are under the interpretation that one site has different information than another site. Okay. Some people also don't understand that you need to actually update your report to get the information updated. They think it naturally updates itself, right? Even Credit Karma, that's not, if you go on there every day, it doesn't update the score every day. It updates like every 5-7 days, depending on the activity of the file. So that doesn't even, if you logged in every day, you're not going to see the score change every day. Even on that site, but on, like, for instance, if you have a 3 bureau with Experian, or a 3 bureau with Privacy Guard, or 3 bureau with Identity IQ, you actually have to update the report to see a difference in the report. So, for instance, let's say somebody started with us on April 15th, and we're convinced that this is end the following month of May 10th. We'll reach out to the client. Hey, listen, we need you to update the report so we can check it. Yeah, we're asking you to update it because that update will reflect the new changes. Otherwise, you're going to keep logging in and looking at the exact same report from April 15th when you started, and people don't even realize that. So personally, I think all of these should come with some degree of a tutorial. But the problem is that, number one, the bureaus don't have any interest in that. Privacy Guard and any of the privately owned ones, they have no interest in that, because why would they want to waste any time trying to educate people? I mean, that's for idiots like us, right? I mean, why would you ever want to educate somebody on how to use your site? I mean, that would be such idiocy, right? Just to provide some clarification on why there's this disparity and you're driving people crazy because they don't understand why this is happening or that's happening. So, I just think that there's just such like crazy levels of confusion that exist among all of them. Like people don't even realize that they all use different formulas too.
Correct,
And I know
correct. I was going to ask you just about that of how do they come up with these, algorithmic formulas to say Equifax is this score, TransUnion is this score, and Experian is this score.
Well, I mean, what they're doing is they're putting a certain, it's broken into a pie, and then there's different percentages that apply to different areas.
Which the percentages are like, well, your credit score is 35% of it is based on your credit history.
Correct, and a large portion of it, though, the active scoring component is your unsecured credit ratio, right? Which we talk about a lot. That's your active scoring component. Like when you see your
unsecured
scores,
credit ratio is credit cards that you are actively paying on.
Your total credit card limits against total credit card balances. Most people think that, when they go and run one, they run one inquiry, right, and their score drops 5. 2 days later the score drops 8 points. They think it's from the one inquiry, right? Everybody's convinced inquiries are just, that somehow they have this way of doing things like that. Unfortunately, the reality of it, though, is that probably more than likely in those 3 or 4 days, one of their cards, the statement date reported, right, and then the updated balance reported, and it probably went up ever so slightly, which forced the score to go down ever so slightly, right? But people don't realize that because people don't understand that the only time your credit card balances report the pay downs is on the statement date. So for instance, let's just say, or the day after the statement date, a day or two, depending on the card company. So if you have 3 different cards and they have 3 different statement dates in the course of any calendar month, you're going to see them update differently on each month. And more than likely, the day you're going to see the scores fluctuate are going to be right around when those cards update. Because if your usage went up or it went down, you're going to see it move accordingly because it is that much of an active scoring component. And that doesn't matter which site you use, right? It doesn't matter because it'll happen on any of them because that's a real thing that happens on any scenario. That's not based upon a monitoring site. That's based upon how scores are arrived at and how they report, right? So that's not something you would deviate from. Now, if you're somebody that has 0% usage always, well, you're probably not seeing that many score fluctuations. You're just not. Because what happens is when you open up an auto loan, personal loan, school loan, etc., after you'll lose like 10 points when you first open them, and then after you make the first 2 or 3 payments, that'll correct back up, a couple points more, and then that thing is priced idealism from that point forward. Like you're not seeing any additional points that accumulate from there. At that point, you are priced in. You are priced to tippy top at that point with those loans. So you have nowhere to go but down if you miss a payment, right? You need to make every single payment, otherwise you're going to get torched. That goes for mortgages the same way. As far as the only thing you're going to see any score adjustment is the unsecured credit ratio. So for instance, you pay all your bills and keep your unsecured credit ratio at 0. You probably get no alerts. You probably don't see your score move all that much ever in any situation. You do it, a random amount of inquiries in a year. You keep it under 6 within the course of a year. You're probably not seeing any score adjustment anywhere. It probably just stays flat the whole year, quite honestly. And then more than likely, if you got no negatives, you're probably somewhere in the high 7s, low 8s. In all reality, if it's a build-out file properly. Now, on the other hand, if you're somebody that's constantly using your cards, running them up, paying them down, which is fine, just be aware of why you're seeing on those dates a day or two after the statement date on that card, why you see the score jump. Anybody that's listening, do your own example of it. Do your own experiment. Look, going into the following month, going into May, or if you have some more in April, and you spend, but you don't know exactly what the amount is in the statement date relative to the month before, you'll be able to see. I mean, you can even go into the alerts on any one of the sites. It'll say your credit card usage increased, right when, and that alert that you're getting is commensurate with when that reports, right? So
correct. Well, at least Equifax or Experian sends you emails like that, letting you know, hey, you're.
Creditkarma does too. They do the same.
Creditkarma does too. Okay.
Which I don't like referencing, but most of them do. I mean, if you're set up with the account, they'll typically tell you when your usage is increased, which subsequently, shortly thereafter, you'll see the score go down. It's just the way it is. It's this for that. It's an inverse relationship. And given the fact that it's the most active scoring component, it's something that you're inevitably going to see. And you can control it, though. So I tell clients all the time, listen, as long as you know that, as long as you're aware of that, and let's just say 1 month you got to lean on your cards too much, but your score dropped, you know how to get it back up, right? And I'm saying assuming all the negative accounts are off, because these are conversations we have with clients when all the accounts are off and things are clean, and they learn throughout the process that what we say is actually the way it is, and they start to see it, and they see materialize, and they're fully bought in at that point. And then by the time we're done, we say, well, listen, going forward, when you're doing this, just make sure that if you need to lean on them and you run them up, just make sure you know how to get them back down to get the score back up. And it's just that simple. It's really not any more overcomplicated than that, as long as you're paying your bills on time, right? Now, obviously, people that come out of the other side of our program and in our, that work with us, we're teaching them just through the process not to go to a dealership and get 25 inquiries run, because obviously that's going to impact you. You get that kind of a situation in 1 day or 2 days, you're going to feel repercussions from that, because that exceeds the threshold that they like to see on an annual basis or a 2-year basis, which is how long inquiries report. Inquiries only report for 2 years, right? So they want you to have a certain amount within that period, and when you get beyond that, you start to feel some pressure. But if you know what you're doing and you do it properly, you shouldn't have any reason to exceed that threshold, so there should be no problem. And we obviously, one of the things we talk about in a tremendous amount of depth is making sure to avoid running to that issue at the dealership, right? That's where a lot of people really get torched on the inquiries, and it happens all the time. And unfortunately, people come to us after it's happened to them, and we do a good job, obviously, like reverse engineering the best we can, so that when they go back, they don't run into the same issue again. And even after we're done with them, they know how to handle it, so they can avoid that. So it's stuff like that we try to obviously prepare accordingly, but at the same time, that's one element. As long as you're not running excessive inquiries to tie it all back, if you're not running excessive inquiries and you keep your usage at zero and you're paying all your bills, your score is not going to move that much. It's really not. It's going to stay relatively flat because there's nothing moving it. The active component is flat. You're making all your bills. Your bills are all paid. You don't have any negatives. You're not going to see the same fluctuation as somebody that's running the cards up, who has a clean file, or somebody that's got a lot of lates and stuff that's accumulating. Obviously, that's going to swing the report. Plus, if there's usage going up for existing cards, it's going to drop the score along with anything else. So I mean, there's variables, but if you're in a controlled scenario where it's clean and it's done, meaning there's no other negatives, it should be. You should have a good handle once you leave at least our program and understanding why this happens or that happens, etc. And it takes away a lot of the guesswork, and it allows you some clarity on why certain things occur, right? Regardless of the site, regardless of the formula, etc.
But didn't before these credit monitoring companies, their algorithm was more based on mortgage, how to get a mortgage, and now
you mean like a FICO based model,
like a FICO based model, and now they're more of a credit score model.
Well, I mean, I know most of them are still FICO based. I mean, Experian, I think is Equifax. I think Equifax.com, I think is Beacon. TransUnion is the Vantage score, but but most of them are FICO-based scores, for the exception of Creditkarma and a handful of other ones, like the credit card. The ones where you get free with your credit card. You log in and see.
That's like the
credit
card
offers it. Chase offers it. They all offer. Those scores are out of this mind. They're out of this world too. They're like Creditkarma type stuff, right? Like completely crazy. Like no way
if you
to correlate.
get Capital One and they give you the credit.
They offer you credit. It's a thing called CreditWise. But but I'm not even just talking about that. I'm talking about like people that have accounts at Chase offers one, where it's like this free monitoring that comes with it. And again, I say again, guys, there's not a lot of things that are free in society that are actually functional to the point where it's actually useful, right? So, the credit card sites are not somewhere you want to lean on as far as scoring, and it should be something you should be using as a basis for your scoring. It's just not, because you're not going to see it anywhere, and I don't know why you would want to utilize a scoring model that you're not going to see or even remotely see close to anywhere. And I understand they don't preface it, and I understand that there's anywhere that it says that anywhere on anything, but you can take my word for it that it's a reality that these scores that you see with these sites are meaning like the credit card scoring sites and the Credit Karmas. These are not scores you're going to see anywhere. I mean, unless they're exactly the same scores you're seeing on Experian, where it shouldn't. If your file's clean, you really shouldn't see that much of a deviation. But if you're somebody that has some negatives or has some usage, you're going to see a pretty significant difference. And as a result of that, it's going to confuse you, and it does. And I know that it confuses a lot of people because I hear about it all the time, and we have to basically reverse engineer that confusion so they understand where Credit Karma needs to be in the broader purview of their understanding of credit, right? I mean, and it just shouldn't be on the top 5. It should be there if they want to look and use it as a further alert system, but it can't be used as a means to measure score that you potentially think when you go out and get new credit that's going to be even close. It's just not. Yes. A lot of cases, it's not even close. Now, again, I repeat, if you have a clean file and everything's nice and clean, any formula is not going to deviate that much. But what happens is if there's a late or if the usage is high, that's how the formulas deviate from each other ever so slightly, right? When it's a FICO-based formula, the weight of that formula is weighted in favor of your mortgage history. When it's a Beacon formula, it's typically weighted in favor of the auto history. There's credit card formulas as well, where it's weighted in favor of the history of the credit cards. There's a little more weight that's placed on that area. If you don't have that area, obviously on your report, then you're going to get points. You're going to get gift points in those particular instances until you open something up with that piece of credit. So
is that why when you go for a car dealership and they don't see any installment accounts where they'll go by whatever mortgage or credit cards you have, your revolving credit card usage, the credit scores?
Well, again, we talked about when you go for the car, the dealership doesn't run anything. The dealership pumps it into like a lending tree type system, which is effectively a wholesale commercial rate system, right? So they pump it in there. They got 30, 40 lenders. They pump it into that system. They see whatever soft offers they get, and that's what they go with.
Okay.
So they're not running you individually, right? I mean, they can if they.
So even when you go to the Mercedes-Benz dealership or Toyota or Honda, and it says Toyota financing, Mercedes financing,
that's leasing. Anytime you see the actual dealer as the finance company, that's a lease. So you got to understand something. When you're leasing a car, you're effectively renting it. You couldn't rent a car from the dealer, right? So the dealer is just a conduit from the manufacturer to the consumer. So when you lease a car, sure, the dealer gets paid, but you're effectively, that car is on loan to you, and you're renting it from the actual manufacturer of the car. That's why when you lease a Lexus, you're dealing with Lexus financially. You lease a BMW, you're dealing with BMW financially. You lease a lease a Toyota, you're dealing with Toyota financial, right?
Correct.
The car manufacturers are not in the business of lending money, right? So I mean, there's a few situations, where you'll see, like for instance, GM. If you lease a GM Financial, it's all the same.
Correct.
The lenders aren't going to take on that risk and finance as well unless they have to, right? So they outsource that risk so that they can be complete with the sale when they're selling it. When they're leasing it, unfortunately, that's not a sale. So you're going to see a different situation. But the credit decision is going to be arrived at comparably, though, right? And maybe even more so a little tougher when you're leasing, only because of the fact that they got to get that car back.
Correct.
Right? So, I mean, at some point in time, they're getting that car back unless somebody buys out the lease. So, I mean, with all that in mind, I mean, you're dealing in a situation where effectively it's probably the underwriting's a little tighter on the lease side of things for that reason, right? But I'm not familiar with any type of, when that could be just, that could just be a sales pitch where they start referencing mortgages and this, and it's just that sounds more like a sales pitch than anything else. And there's nobody that does better, slimy, greasy, gross, disgusting sales pitches in dealerships. So,
correct.
It's one of the most manipulative, predatory environments that exists in finance today. I say it, and I say it once, I say it over and over and over again every time I want. I don't know how they're not more heavily regulated. There's absolutely no financial regulatory license required at a dealership. None. Zero. You literally, there's no, I'm not even sure. I checked about 2 months ago. I don't even think there's a background check done. So, I mean, just do the math on that and ask yourself, how on earth is this the person that's basically handling your finances, the approval of your loan and everything? And then it starts to make sense why the environment's so predatory. Obviously when somebody has to go through.
Charles just said the best way is to get pre-approval before you go to the dealer these days.
We've been saying that for a decade. Yes, that's exactly what we do, and we position all our clients on that, and we do that all the time. But the fact of the matter is that it doesn't change the fact that it's still disgusting. I mean, that's not to say that there aren't good dealers, because there are. Right. We have a client of ours that owns a smaller dealership in Arizona, and he's a real good guy, and he cares about people. But I'm talking about, and and he's a small percentage of a much larger pie. I mean,
Yes.
in an average situation, everybody has experienced what we describe as far as the auto dealer situation, and we just bring light to how they make money so that people understand why the rates they get are so astronomical, why there's so many inquiries they run. Because why on earth would somebody need to run 20 inquiries when if they called every one of those inquiries, half of them approved them, right? The only reason that they're doing it is so they can build in a wider yield spread so they can profit more from each and every single human being that walks in the door, right? Which in a capitalistic environment is great. The problem is that they're sizing up the human being across from them based on how much fiscal knowledge they think that human being has, right? Or how naive they are. Or basically they're effectively just sizing them up to see if they can be taken advantage of, right?
Correct.
Now, that smells a lot like 2007. I don't understand how the mortgage company and mortgage brokers are effectively not even a line of work anymore as a result of what happened in 2007. So I don't know how the car dealership business and the finance manager at the dealerships got away scot-free. I just don't know. And post Dodd-Frank, I don't know how they worked that out. And I won't ever know. And I don't think anybody will ever know because it doesn't make any sense.
Well, Jay, that's a mystery right now. I mean, they're suffering right now. I mean, have you seen 6 months no payment, no interest?
Listen, they're going to be. This is another thing. We get a lot of clients that call on a regular basis talking about, they want to buy a car. I'm like, just wait. I mean, granted, dealers have a like I said earlier, they're just a conduit between the manufacturer of the vehicle and the actual consumer, right? And they put a little markup on. They make a lot more money at the auto body shop or their servicing side of things than they do probably on the sale. Right? So the thing is that they're going to have a floor, right? As opposed to real estate, where technically speaking there isn't a floor, but the dealer's going to have a floor on how little, because they're not going to take a loss on it, right? Worst case scenario, if they buy it on a warehouse line, they'll send it back to the manufacturer if they have to. Right, and they'll return that car if they don't sell it in the period of time they have to. So they're not going to take a loss on it to a certain degree. So when you hear them say they're taking a loss, they're lying to you. But you could get them down to the bare bones and get them to throw in a lot of crap. And I think what you're going to run into at some point in May when we reopen, whenever that happens, whether it's mid or end, which I think more than likely it's really going to be closer to the end, middle or end, right?
Middle of May or ending of May.
I think mid-end of May, I think is probably really when we'll probably open. And I think as a result of that, you're going to see dealers have these incredible – whenever we get confirmation that we're opening back up and people can leave the house again on a more broad basis.
Well, your state, they opened up the other day, and I saw you at the beach on the news.
Yeah, right. I got time to go to the beach, man. If there was only enough hours to go to the beach in a day, man, that would be nice. But but no, what I'm saying is that when they do open, you're gonna see like holiday type promotions bigger than you've ever seen, because they have so many cars that they've been sitting on for the last 2 or 3 months. Nobody's leaving the house. It's like the housing market. Nothing is selling. Nobody's buying. There's no demand. Right? So effectively, if you wait, you're going to get some incredible deals. You're talking about 6 months, no interest. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if once we establish a period of when we're going to open back up and it's more on a collective basis, that you see every single one of them outpacing the other, trying to throw all kinds of promotions in to sell as many cars in that first couple weekends as they can, because it's going to be after that people are going to realize exactly the extent of how it's affecting their wallet. So the further you go out from there, the less people are going to want to spend money, because more people are going to come to the realization of what the new norm is for them financially. You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like, if they came back to their job and the middle of May or end of May, and they're there for a month, and their boss realizes, look, man, we got to cut back. We're not doing the same. Their company isn't doing the same volume they did before, and they got to do pay cuts. People are going to start recalibrating, right? And they're going to stop making purchases, which we've talked about in previous ones, and you're going to start to see a reassessment of spending, and we've talked
what's
about this
important
before.
in life, what's valuable.
Yeah, but I mean that would be great if that's the case. I think it's going to be more though from a perspective of okay, they've arrived at the realization that things are contracting. See, when we say stuff and people hear it on the news and they hear it over and over again, certain trigger words and stuff like that, they just ignore it, right? And they deal with like this kind of optimistic, happy-go-lucky scenario, right? Now, I know there's not a lot of happy-go-lucky going on in our society right now, but there's also a lot of people that are disregarding the fact of what everybody's saying about how the contraction, how this could be a sustained contraction, and they're just hoping that they're going to go back and everything's going to be the same, right? Unfortunately, I don't think you could come out the other side of this the same. Now, I'm not saying that everybody's going to get fired. I don't think that's the case. I'm not saying
tell you guys something. We're not doom and gloom here, but we do look at reality here.
Yeah, no. But there's look. If you're going to be honest and you're going to try and give people the on anything, you're going to try and be transparent. Yes. You also want to be transparent about everything, right? I mean, why would you want to lie to them? And because the more you set an expectation, the more it allows people to prepare, right?
Correct.
Both, not only just like financially, but psychologically, right? Because a lot of times it's the psychological element that takes people a long time to adjust, so they can prepare in advance. And let's just say it's not as bad as everybody anticipates, and maybe it's better. Well, then it's a win, right? But at least you prepared yourself for a situation that may be slightly worse than anticipated. So I just think that, and given the fact that we're constantly trying to give people the right amount of knowledge so they can make the right decision, I think that waiting for like a month to get that car, I think would be the right move, just because of what I anticipate is going to happen. And I think it's inevitable, because I think that they've just been, I mean, you want to talk about slow. You're talking about, I saw last week that the volume of car sales so far in the first quarter of this year, and this was through March, by the way. This isn't even April, which is even worse. But March was back to the volume, matched the volume from 2012.
Oh, wow.
You're talking about 7 years.
8
years. That it was competing with 2012 volume of sales. So, I mean, that was through the first quarter. That was before we've even been hit. The second quarter is going to be atrocious, because April is a lost month. Part of May is going to be a lost month. As we've seen with the unemployment claims, there's 18 million unemployment claims over the last 3 weeks, and they're trailing, right? So, I mean, it's not like people are going
to... I'm in Jersey, Jay. We got a lot of cars here. People still going to need cars.
No. I'm not saying they're not going to need cars, but they're going to find economic solutions. Either they're not going to keep trading up like they have been. Oh. See, the fiscal understanding around here has been, like I told you, and I've been saying on podcasts past, the average new car sale up until this all happened was 36,000, 36 and change, 36,700. So to think the average wage of a person in our country, I think, is approximately $54,000, $55,000, and the new car they were buying was 36. That's asinine, right? To do that math, you don't even know how the numbers even work. The numbers don't work. So when you say to a situation, when you tell somebody, look, you're 55, you are now making, that industry average is going to come down to 49 or 48 potentially, or 50. Let's just say 50. You lose 10%, right, in wage over the course of time. They're not going to be constantly looking for ways to trade up on cars. They're going to be looking for ways to trade down on cars, right?
Correct.
And they're going to be looking for ways to get a beater or a new car that runs forever. Correct. Because in their mind's eye, that's what they need to prepare for, right? So you're not going to see the same amount of volume rolling over if things turn as anticipated, because it's going to be more about sustainability. And I think there's, if you want to be completely honest, I think that there's worse things that could happen than people getting economically, living within their means, right? I think there was a lot of people that live within their means after 2007, 2008. It's a whole different generation of people now that have come into the consumer base that I think as a result of this will probably learn to live within their means too. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a good thing, right?
Correct.
It just doesn't go well for an economy like ours, which is almost entirely burns and turns off of the consumer. Because if the consumer's not spending money, hand over fist like it has been for the last 5 or 6 years, you're not going to see it grow the way it has been, right? Ever so slightly. So it's a bit of a catch-22, but at the same time, I mean, it is what it is.
I mean, it has to get done, though, for an economy to work. There needs to be debt, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, in our economy, there has to be debt. But there's different levels of debt, right? When you're there's sustainable levels of borrowing, like leverage against yourself, right? And your income. And like we talked about before, I mean, when we're reaching in good times, when the economy is growing and companies are making money and they're growing properly, people, they load up on debt, right? Because it allows them to grow, allows them to build, it allows them to open up a new office, it allows them to bring on new employees, right? That's what they do. It's just how it is. And if you're somebody that is, you're running your own household, when they're making more money and they think there's prospects of them making more money, they get a newer car. They get a more expensive car. Case in point, the guy that's making $55,000 is driving a $36,000 car. It's and that number is a real number. Now, I'm not saying everybody makes 55.
But Jay, he got a 70-month or 86-month loan.
No. It wouldn't be 86, but they just started offering the 84 months last year. Even in that instance, do the math though. 36 and 84, you're still paying $600 a month. If you make $50,000 a year, you're effectively $4,700 gross after taxes, assuming that you don't contribute to 401k, assuming your employer, you don't have to pay a portion of your insurance, assuming all these other things that typically come out for people that work in corporate America, you're still netting, if you get a true 70% cleared to you, you're talking about maybe $3,000, right? So $3,000 and 600 or 700, even at that amount is going to be, you're putting towards your car payment. But the reality is most people that work in corporate America also have to contribute to the 401, and most of them do. They have to contribute to their health insurance. They have to contribute to other things. So you're talking about a situation where you might get $3,000, but more than likely you're going to get like $2,500. And that $500-$600 payment with rent, you're basically breaking even. You take $500-$600 off of, 20, let's just say in that example, $2,600-$2,700, and leaves you $2,000. Let's just say your rent's $1,500. You just the rest of that is for groceries, right? And that's on an 84-month loan with at very nominal interest. The rest is just groceries, man. That's what I'm saying. Like an individual like that, I understand. Like everybody's needs are different, and I get all that. But I'm saying that what'll happen is there'll be a reset of. A lot of consumers won't be in the danger zone of leverage, right? That's like the danger zone, right?
Yes.
Any zig or zag.
We need to have a podcast on the numbers to explain to people, because the other day, I forgot the name of the person who started credit repair with us, but I checked his credit and he was paying for a vehicle. That was the only thing keeping his credit score up. And he bought the vehicle for $30,000. And I looked at his thing and he said like 70 months, $400 something. John, that guy at the end of the loan, he's going to pay $8,774 or something like that.
Yeah,
at the end of the loan, like $8,000 more. And that's just on interest. That's crazy.
Yeah, no, his interest rate, but that sounds right. I mean, he's almost doubling the loan, or 50% of the loan at the end of the day in interest. I mean, that all is, the longer you go out in the term, that's going to happen, though, right? I mean, that's what's going to happen. It's compound interest. So, I mean, but more so that the longer you go out in those terms, the higher the rates go, because it's more risk to the lender, right?
Correct.
So if you're somebody like, for instance, a lender, one of the credit unions we use, if it's a 5-year loan, they're typically down at 1 3/4. You go out 6-7 years, that bounces up to 2 1/4, 2 1/2, because it's more risk to the lender. The further you go out, the more potential that you're going to go later, potentially default on the loan, right? So, I mean, that's understandable. And obviously, again, the longer you drag it out, the more of an issue it's going to be. So, it just is what it is. It's part of borrowing. This is why I think it's so important, for people to understand what they're getting themselves into,
Yes.
And most people don't. Most people are just happy that they can. I couldn't tell you the amount of people that just go into the dealer and say, I can afford $500. I mean, that is like a dream to a salesman, right? Like, you say I can afford $500 or $600, you're trying to buy a $20,000 car. Well, you're doing that guy a favor, right? Yes. I mean, you need to come in there. If you're not doing it our way, which you should come in and do it our way, and by our way, I mean getting approved beforehand, and then going in and just picking out your car to eliminate the damage that could accumulate as a result of going in there. But if you're not doing it our way, just utilize some of the knowledge we taught. We did a whole cast on the dealers and stuff, didn't we? Didn't we do a whole one on that?
The repossessions, how to remove repossessions, I think.
Yeah, we talked about all that in depth. So if you're somebody that is just listening, or you're going to listen at a different time, and you're interested, check it out, because it goes into a lot of depth. And I think all the ones we do on this, the depth is important, because the depth and the pictures I try to paint here and the depth I provide are so that people can fully grasp it, right? So that you can fully understand it. I'm not doing it because I like to hear myself speak. I'm doing it because the more depth I go into, the more any level of understanding or fiscal knowledge can at least digest it and figure out how their way they can try and implement it. So in those cases, it definitely should try and be avoided.
Okay. You want to go into some questions?
Sure.
Okay. So we got this customer that just started. I think is Armando Rosario. I don't know if he is. Okay. So he's saying right now that he has 2 vans that he got for his to do business. I don't know what he does, but he got 2 vans and he's trying to right here. I have 2 work vans. I want to refinance. They killed me with the rates. Dealer killed me, crazy high rates. I was desperate. I had to do it. So John, here's my question to you, right? When you buy a vehicle, but then you're trying to refinance on that vehicle, but doesn't that vehicle, when you take it off the lot, doesn't it lose its value already? So how do they come up with the new value of the car? Do they go by what the value of the car is, or will they go by how much money he owes on the car?
Right. So it's going to be done a couple ways. So when it comes to any auto loan,
okay,
be a refinance or a purchase, the bank is only going to lend you up to 110% of the value of their perceived value of the vehicle, right? So that even that additional 10% is in a lot of cases to roll in taxes, title, and tax, right? That's the purpose of it.
Okay.
Right?
So that's like a seller concession.
It's not really a seller concession, because the bank's providing it. The seller concession, the actual seller is providing it, right? The bank in this case is basically saying, we won't go any higher than 110% of the value of the vehicle. Therefore, effectively making sure that you shouldn't be overpaying for the vehicle at the same time, because that vehicle is an asset for them. It's a piece of collateral, right? Yeah. So even though it's a depreciating asset, they're still able to recoup something down the line, right? So what ultimately ends up happening when you do the refi is it's the same idea, right? So they're going to base it. Most lenders that you go to, they're going to have their own desktop valuing system, and it's a little different. Credit unions use a specific one, and retail banks use a different one. That they arrive at whatever they think that value is that they're comfortable with the mileage, the age of the car, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and they won't exceed 110%. But here's the kicker, though, and I think what a lot of people don't realize is when people put money down on the car, you should, number one, if anybody that's listening to this hasn't realized this yet, there's no lenders that require you, no real lenders, by the way. I'm not talking about a buy here, pay here. I'm talking about real lenders. There's no real lenders that require you to put down 20% on a purchase. Okay, they just don't. There's no requirement. I couldn't tell you. I've gotten countless clients who, for auto loans over the years, there's none that say, yeah, we'll give you 35 grand, but you got to put down 20%. That is the dealer. And that is the dealer because these transfers of these, when you go and buy a car from a dealer, it takes about a month for it to settle, meaning for like title to clear, the bank to get title in their name, for them to send the check and the check to clear. And that's when they get paid. So that cash you put down at the table, that's going in someone's pocket. That's why they're always pushing cash, right? They're always trying to get you to put money down. And a lot of people don't understand the different lanes between, buying a house and buying a car. Buying a house, yes, you have to put money down. It's an appreciating asset. It's a large purchase, and they want to see you have skin in the game. When it's an auto loan, it's totally different. It's a rapidly depreciating asset. Banks understand this. They're in the business of lending and securing, and as a result of that, they lend up to a certain amount, right? And that amount has been detailed. If you fit within those guidelines, it works. Now, if you were to go and take a loan out from a dealer, and let's just say you bought it for $35,000 and you put $5,000 down, or let's say you bought it for $40,000 and you put $5,000 down, and you're only financing $35,000, right?
Correct.
Well, you could have technically overpaid, and the sales rep might technically know that, because in reality, as long as they keep you on 110%, then they can get the loan done. When in reality, they want you to put the $5,000 down because that gets you under the threshold, knowing that you're overpaying by probably $5,000 or $6,000. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay, so what ends up happening in those instances is that, let's just say, same scenario, you borrow for 40 for $5 grand, you take a loan for 35 at 15% interest, right? So this is the kind of scenario that it's not going to work on. Let's just say they get you for 15% interest. So all loans are front loaded with interest. Okay, it's just the way they are. It's how they set up. It doesn't matter the bank; they're all front loaded with interest. So if on that $35,000 loan over 60 months at 15%, your payment's going to be roughly probably close to $700, right? Of that $700 payment, about 80% of it's going to go, since the interest rate is so high, about 80% is going to go to interest. So 560, maybe 580 of that $700 payment is going to go to interest. So let's just say after the first year, you've made roughly 12 payments of $700, which is $8,400. 80% of that is going to interest. So in essence, you're talking about a situation where, I don't know, maybe $1,500 is going to principal. So if you bought the car for $35,000, you made $8,000 in payments. You're like, okay, I can go refi it, right? I'm down. But in reality, you realize that with taxes, tax, and title, which are tacked onto the 35, you really only made about $1,000 worth of payments off that $8,000 or $9,000 you actually paid down.
Oh,
so you go to refinance it, and let's just say you've driven it normally, right? Average person runs 15,000 miles on a car in a calendar year, right?
Yes.
So now that car is depreciated by, I don't know, let's just say, for argument's sake, a $35,000 car, let's just say it depreciates, I don't know, 15% a year. So now it's worth, $30,000 roughly, if you believed it was worth 35 before. But let's say it's worth 30, and now you actually owe more than, because the interest was so high in his front load, you actually owe more than the car's actually worth. So you're not going to be able to refinance in that instance. Does that make sense?
So you upside down.
You're upside down because of the price. So the people, that's why we always ask clients when they come, what's the goal? What's the goal? Okay, well, I just bought a car. All right, well, what happened? We get the whole story. Well, I hope you didn't overpay. What's the rate? We can actually break it down to make sure that, we can get them refinanced. Because the alternative to that then at that point is, if you did overpay and you got a raw deal, which happens, then you'd have to trade it in. You'd have to roll the negative equity, whatever you're upside down in, into a new car, and we'd have to get you in a new car that's more sustainable, because that whole ideology is not sustainable, right? None of it's sustainable from the minute you got it to the first year when you paid $8,000 or $9,000 in actual payments, and only approximately $1,000 went to principal, right? Because that's going to be like that for about, you start to see that feather out around year 2.5. Like, there's people, like, do the math there. So let's just say over 2 years, same scenario. Let's say the split is approximately the same. It slowly feathers out when you get towards the backside of the loan. But for the first 2.5 years, it's going to be weighted to about 80% if your interest is that high. So if you pay $16,000 worth of payments, right, over the first 2 years, approximately, using the math that I was doing before, only about $3,000 of it's going to be going towards principal.
Oh, wow.
So you just made $16,000 in payments, and $3,000 went to principal, right? So it's going to be very difficult for anybody to refinance that. So that's why, that's why we just keep impressing upon how important it really is when you go to a dealer, or hopefully you don't. You just go there to pick out the car rather than handle any financing. But when you do, you just know what you're doing, because it can be just a very unsustainable, short-lived scenario in situations like that. As far as Armando, I don't know the particulars around the interest rate and stuff, but
he says he had to do it. We get some customers. I just need to buy a car. I need it ASAP. I mean, at that time.
No, I know. I mean, I don't know what the numbers were as far as the rate. I know what his report looks like, but I didn't know what the rate was as far as how.
Armando, you're still on. Don't worry about it. We're not gonna laugh at you. You can tell us the rate.
No, but it's not even about that. It's more about just making sure what the plan. But we can talk about.
We can talk about it afterwards.
We can talk about that with him privately. But go back to what you had asked. You could definitely refinance it, but the problem is it's got to, as long as it, if you're somebody that, let's just say you had a 6% rate and you paid, you paid roughly what it's worth over the course of a year, you should be able to refi it, right? Because 6 obviously is a far cry from 15, and even though a large majority of the payment's going to go towards interest, not really a lot is ultimately going to end up going towards interest, really, right? Because there's not going to be that much interest accrued into the overall payment, because there's not as much interest being paid in the life of the loan that's getting spread out. So it's going to be a totally different dynamic. So it's the ones where the high interest rate and the overpayment, I mean, you just see it all the time at every corner with some of these deals that somehow get approved, where people are just getting hammered at each corner, at each end, and it's just not sustainable. So, but you can, as long as the rate's not too high, you can, and you don't overpay for it, you definitely can refinance, and it's, like I said, they'll go up to like 110% the value of the car.
Okay.
And they use it, and again, just to finish with UNS, and they typically, each lender uses their own desktop determinant on the value of the car, right? They don't use like independent people that come in and give them determinations. They have their own desktop,
Kind of like that dealership, the Max car, what do you call it?
CarMax.
CarMax.
Yeah, exactly like CarMax.
Okay.
I mean, they're just another example of what is, I'm sure they probably copied it from what lenders use, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a guess. I don't know that for sure, but I mean, I'm sure it's derived from that idea. I don't even know, but I wouldn't be surprised if the guy that started it probably used to work in the, just based upon how they have that way of arriving at it. It's very comfortable.
Yeah. Okay. All right, cool. So we have Marsha from YouTube, and Marsha's saying, when do you pay, when you pay medical bills off your credit report, do they remove from your report?
No, and I think there's a large misconception that people think when you pay an account off, when you pay a collection off, that it comes off the credit report, and unfortunately it's not the case. So if it's a positive account on your credit report, just a general account, you paid it all the way through, and then you paid it to close, that account's going to stay in your report for 10 years from the date you close it. If you have a negative account, and let's just say you paid to close it, that account's going to stay in your report for 7 years from the date of the first late, right? And you're going to start to see it slowly scale out from there. As far as collections are concerned, if you don't coordinate some type of a pay for remove, which, it's a possibility, it's not common, but if you did, that's the only way you would get a collection removed from the report. Otherwise, it's going to be open, and if you paid, it's going to say paid collection, which, by the way, does you no good as far as it doesn't jump the score. It doesn't give you any scoring. This isn't me telling people not to pay their collections. This is just the reality, because people are misled in regards to believe that if they pay a collection, their score is going to shoot right back up, or if they catch up on an account, it's going to go right back where it was. Unfortunately, that's not the case. The damage is done, which is why services like ours are there, because it allows the opportunity to get those accounts removed, so that you can get the score back up. But unfortunately, no, it does not. When you pay them, it doesn't remove them ever.
Okay. Armando says 16%.
Oh, yeah. So we'll probably have to talk with him in more depth on that.
Yeah.
On how we're going to have to navigate that situation.
Yes.
But 16 is tough, and it's tough to refinance, like I was explaining earlier in the scenario, and it's going to be tough.
Because he's paying more into interest at that point, right? When you have a high interest?
Oh, I mean, that's, first of all, 16%. And this isn't me judging Armando. This is just in general, because I was saying it earlier. It's just 16%. I understand it's a means to an end, but they know that. That's why they gouge you, right? But the problem is that when you're looking to refinance, there's a certain level that the interest is just so high that almost all of your payment goes towards the interest. And that would, you're getting up at that level, 15, 16%. Even when you're at 13, 12, 13, 14, starts to get really high. But you start really getting to a different level when you get above 14, to where it's really, really difficult using the scenario I just gave. I mean, over the course of 2 years of a $700 payment per month, I mean, you'll have paid $16,000 over the course of 2 years, and only about $2,800 to $3,000 goes to principal. I mean, I could tell you about conversations about people like, where did all the principal go? Well, unfortunately, that's the way a loan is set up. That's every loan you take. It's just the problem is that, all interest is always front loaded. And unfortunately, when the interest rate is really high, a large majority of the payment is going to go towards interest, unfortunately. But, look, with Armando, in any situation, it's not that we can't work around it. It's just a refinance in some cases, unless you got a really good deal on the truck or the van, may not be possible because of the limitations surrounding how much they can lend against that car, right? And the percentages that they can go up to, which is 110% of the value of the vehicle. So that's the only exception. So if you can't, then, like I said before, there's always the option to trade in, roll over the negative equity at a low rate, because let's just say, for argument's sake, we turn around and he has to do that. And let's say he's got negative equity of like $6,000 a car. You roll that over, and what's going to happen is, let's say we get him an interest rate of 2%, which isn't unheard of, 2 or 3%, almost 100%, 92% of your payment in that instance, when you're paying 2 or 3%, goes towards principal. So then literally, same scenario, if you paid $700 a month for 12 months, it's $8,000, approximately $7,200 of that is going to, actually $7,500, that's going to go towards principal. So you're not only going to pay off the negative equity, but you're also going to pay significant that you rolled into it, but you can also pay off a significant amount of the actual principal in the first year and the second year. It's going to be all principal, right? Because you've already paid off the equity plus some principal, and you're going to steamroll through it the second year. So it helps when you go from a tough situation like that, even if you have to trade in and roll over the negative equity, the low rate is where the key is, right? Because that's going to help you. Any payment that you make is going to go significant if you keep the rate that low or somewhere in that vicinity. Large majority of that payment is going to go to principal, which is going to help pay the balance down and move the loan along quicker.
So, Carol asks, does it make your job harder or easier if we start sending disputes in prior to you providing your services?
Harder by far.
Harder.
By far. Way
I mean,
by
I don't
far.
want to tell people that we do have a $99 do-it-yourself credit repair system.
No. But okay, let me preface it. If you're using, the reason we came out with our system, the $99 was for people that couldn't afford our service, right? And the purpose of that was so that they would use a system that we know works, that we know will get them where they need to be. And if for some reason they go a certain distance and they want to do it themselves, and then they want to hand it off, we know that it's a functional system we can work behind, right? Correct. That they're not digging themselves a hole, right? For lack of a better term, or putting themselves in a worse situation. Now, on the other side of that, we have seen endless situations where people just get random templates online and follow what the guy on the credit board said.
609, this and
that.
that.
I mean, it's everything, and then they hammer it with it, right?
Correct.
And then they're shocked why it doesn't work. Well, you got it from a blog online. I mean, you got it from a credit board. I mean, of course you didn't think it was going to work. You didn't pay for it. Why would it work? Because the guy that told you it was going to work said it was going to work. You don't know that guy. That guy's got a Homer Simpson avatar that represents himself, and that's the guy that's going to tell you how to do credit. I mean, I don't understand the mentality, and I'm not attacking the woman that asked the question. I'm speaking generally now.
No, we're not laughing at you. We just
But to answer the original question, yes, it makes it very difficult. That's not. Look, I understand not everybody can afford our service. I understand that, and
Actually, Jay, we were more expensive like a couple of years ago. We've been competitive enough. These past
no. Listen, I agree with you. I'm just saying, though, I think
we've been operating at a discount, especially with what's going on today. I mean, before we were more expensive, but I think we were more expensive so that people could see the value in us, Jay. Because not a lot of people see value on stuff that's too cheap. That's why we don't do anything for like $500. To do
it's
anything
it's the cheapest. Yeah, that's the base price. It's $500. But I mean, there's a lot. Look, this process is a lot of work. It's not just snapping your fingers and poof, it's done. I mean, this is 6 days a week. Clients. And I'm grateful for all the work we get. So don't misunderstand me. It's just a lot of work. And as a result of that, we need a base price in the event that we can't anticipate how long a file is going to take. With that being said, though, if a client is choosing to do it themselves because they're trying, they have the money and they don't believe in the service, well, we're probably not the company for you, because in all honesty, we go out of our way to make ourselves probably the most transparent operation there is on YouTube. I mean, we make endless amounts of completely selfless, for the most part, these podcasts we do trying to educate people on top of the 12 years Gizzy's been posting result-oriented videos. I don't know how you can poke holes in that. If you don't believe by this time, you're probably not going to believe in the service that's being offered, right? I don't think there's anybody else been posting videos about credit repair results for 12 straight years, more and more and more every single year, right? I just don't think there's anybody that's been that consistent. If you're not comfortable at that point, you're probably not going to be comfortable. So, our thrust is to get the people that'll buy into the process. And I'm grateful a lot of the people that we get, almost all of them actually, they come in and they have the understanding, and it's awesome. They have the understanding it's a process, whether we get it done in 15 minutes or it takes a couple months. They understand we're going to help them with funding. They understand we know what we're talking about. They understand. So it's a much easier level of communication. It's a much better relationship with the client. And as a result, it allows us the opportunity to help people at the same time, which I think is great, because in all fairness, there's so many opportunities for people to get taken advantage of on the finance side. especially in a rebuilding situation when people are the most vulnerable, like in situations like this, that I think having a reliable place to go to where you know the people do what they say and say like they do, they walk it like they talk, and you get to not only see it and take their word for it, you get to listen to it, you get to hear it, you get to watch it, you get it from every angle. I just think that it's probably the right way to do it to build trust when somebody's not walking into your office, right? Which, we just don't have the luxury of because we don't have an office in every state in this country. So it doesn't work like this. This is the next best way to do it in the modern style, to just be as transparent as you can in all areas.
John, Carol also said, I heard that not all creditors are available at work to verify debts during the stay at home. Is that true?
I don't even know where anybody would hit. I mean, that has the pungent odor of a credit board comment. Correct. But at the same time, I don't know how anybody would even know that. Like, I don't know how, unless you're the CEO of that company, I don't even know how you would be able to arrive at that conclusion. But it's probably the same guy that said the bureaus were closing, and he perpetrated that myth for a month until people realized that wasn't true. So now the way you keep that myth going is to say, oh, the creditors aren't responding. Here's the reality. Every Fortune 500 company, every creditor in this entire country, they still have skeleton crews working. I mean, they don't just shut down. Correct. Chase Bank isn't shutting down. Santander Auto Loans isn't shutting down. These are billion-trillion-dollar companies. They're not stopped reporting. The Department of Education has not stopped reporting. The government is still in session. So, the departments that report, they report through a system called eOscar. It's a coding system. I've talked about this before. Yes. There's not some guy there processing 450,000 disputes through Chase. It's a coding system. They push. It has a corresponding button push in response to the dispute, if it's not a fraud-related dispute. So none of that matters. It doesn't. It's not like there's some big boiler room over in Chase where all of them sit there and they read these beautiful disputes and they decide which one they like the best and they send them back and they decide on it.
No, the one that signed. They're gonna go after the one that signed, Jay.
Yeah, no, it's the one that has the smiley face emoji at the bottom with a kiss on it. I mean, it's, but I just don't even understand. And I know Carol probably heard it from somewhere. The fact of the matter is, though, I don't know where you come up with that, right? Like, I don't know where that comes from.
Correct.
Like, what bank is going to say? Like, I had an argument with somebody yesterday, and they were like, oh, this wasn't a client. This was actually my wife's cousin, and he was like, yes. He said, and this is the second time he asked me, I heard I should pay my bills now because nobody's paying their bills. I said, listen, if you don't pay your bills, I've already told you this, it's your own fault. I don't know what to tell you, because there's not a situation where you can just stop paying your bills. Sure, they're giving you concessions. Sure, they're doing all this stuff to make your life easier in a certain situation. If you stop paying your bills, you're going to have to deal with the repercussions. There's going to come a time after these concessions expire where the government's going to turn around and say to you, listen, you got to get up and you got to start earning yourself. They're going to say to the businesses, they're going to say to the people, sure, there's another stimulus in the pipeline, but there's a strong probability that that's it. Now, I said
you got to get up your butt. Correct.
I said about 4 or 5 casts ago that I thought that the $2 trillion wasn't enough, the $350 billion for businesses wasn't enough, the $2 trillion total wasn't enough. So I knew that this was coming. I didn't know it was coming this quickly. I thought it would have been towards the summer. We're a little bit early on it, but this is going to be it, because if you start doing the math, our economy is like a $25 trillion economy. Okay, we've already lent close to 10% out in this stimulus. When you add another $500 billion and whatever else is going to come out, you start getting dangerously close to the point where we're running into a problem. You can't just give away 10-15% of an economy that at its peak was 23 trillion. That's contracting right now. So, and if you're raising the amount you're putting out, and it's contracting itself, that percentage goes up. You start getting into the danger zone, right? So I'm saying, like, it's not going to keep lending. So there's going to come a time, probably the fourth quarter of this year, where they're going to be like, people, you got to start standing on your own. No more concessions, no more of this stuff. You got to start paying your own bills. You're not getting any more checks. This is it. Get back to work. And that's going to be the time that it's going to be when people are going to be like, unfortunately, it's just the way it is. But the training wheels are going to eventually come off. And it's going to be unfortunate if the economy doesn't rebound the way they anticipate it is, because it's going to put people in a really tough situation. But Hopefully everything goes smooth. I just don't think, I think there's, we have to see where the dust settles. And to tie it all back to what Carol has, no, I didn't hear that. I wouldn't hear that.
That could be another conversation. That economy
I didn't hear that. I
conversation.
wouldn't hear that because it's not true and it's not happening and it's not real.
She said she heard it on Facebook, Jay.
There you go. Well, that's a credit report's brother. So, I mean, it's just as good. It's just as good way of.
She heard it. She heard it from your cousin, your wife's cousin.
yeah, exactly. He's the guy on Facebook selling the story. Listen, I'm telling you, it's the same. It's the same story about the bureaus being closed. Don't you remember when coronavirus first hit for 2 weeks straight?
Oh my God, yes.
It's everybody. It was the bureaus are closed. The bureaus are closed. I think there was even a hashtag.
We got a couple of customers that was like, we got a customer that called me, a returning customer, truck driver from Michigan somewhere. And he goes, Gizzy, because you know how he's been wanting to start credit repair for the last 6 months. And finally he wanted to get started. And then before he paid us, he was like, yeah, Gizzy, but I don't want to pay you because I don't know if the viewers are going to get back to us or not. Are you just going to take my money? I'm like, what? Are you?
Yeah. No, I know. But listen, that's what I'm saying. It's the same stuff. I mean, if I can only assume maybe it was another, I'm potential. This is a guess, and I'm not here to crap on any other companies, but maybe it's another company. And if you can't actually perform with the knowledge and with the actual efficiency, the only way you're going to do it is misinforming people. You sell them on a dream that's not real, and that's not real. That's not just like we told a long time ago. It wasn't real about the bureaus being closed. They're still processing every dispute and getting back to every dispute. For anybody that actually does volume in this, which I'm grateful to say we do, they would see that. The same way with that, the creditors are getting back to everything. They're not missing. The dispute department didn't disappear on Chase Bank, which is the biggest bank in our country, or any of the smaller banks.
Correct.
That's how they substantiate. They have to be able to do that. That's part of the process of the FCRA. They have to be able to defend the position that they're being disputed on, right, wrong, or indifferent. I mean, everybody's got their own interpretation. I would love
FCRA, Fair Credit Reporting Act.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that long of a read. I mean, I don't know why everybody quotes it, but nobody understands what they're talking about. Just read it. It's not that long of a read. I mean, it's really not. I mean, I don't know why everybody just doesn't read it so they know. I mean, it's literally, you can get a copy online. I mean, it's really that simple. The more you read, the more you can understand. Everybody's at home right now. I mean, you got all the time in the world. Read it. It's not that hard to read.
Okay.
And then you can inform yourself and not be misled by people that may be potentially trying to misinform you.
Okay, Jay, check this out. Marsha from YouTube said, I have 4 negative accounts on my credit report. They're all medical. My goal is to use my stimulus check to pay them off. When I do this, will it be removed from your credit? No, we just got into that. It's not going to remove it. It's going to show.
She was the one that asked if medical collections.
Now, Jay, right now it says unpaid medical collection. When she pays it, it's going to say
collection.
Paid medical collection or paid.
No, just paid collection. If she settles it, it'll say settled for less than the full amount. But again, like I said earlier in response,
but Jay, the negative mark that it's a collection is negative, but isn't the wording also negative? Or is it the same thing? Collection is a collection.
It's effectively the same thing, right? So even if it was, let's just say it was a medical collection, it didn't have any verbiage at the bottom, it would still be hurting her. It's a medical collection, so the way it's reporting is hitting her negatively. The thing is that she pays that and it shows it's settled, or anything. There is no score improvement, none. You might get a point or two. So again, I'm not promoting people not to pay their debts. I'm just saying that if you're
we're not that type of organization.
What's that? No, we're not. And at the same time, I just want people to understand, because I've had conversations with people, they've come out of pocket $3, $4, $5 grand paying off collections because they were under the interpretation that either A was going to come off or B was going to jump their score, and neither one actually materializes, right? Because the negative account is still on there and it's still impacting them just because it's paid. That's like, for instance, for argument's sake, that's like somebody getting a foreclosure, and then before the foreclosure process, they sell it in short sale, right? Same idea. So why on earth would this be any different? It's the same idea. You're just dealing on a different level. You're paying it after you went into default on it, you went into collection on it, you paid it off by the end of it. Sure, yeah, you paid it off, but paid it off a year later. So
I'm gonna be on a podcast tomorrow with a person who does loan modifications. It's going to be on Facebook, on a private group. Anyways, when you have a mortgage, Jay, and you're late on it for 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, you do a modification, right? Which means that they add the payments to the back of the loan. But then the bank says, if you pay for the first 12 months with this loan modification, we're going to remove those late payments. Is that true?
No, I haven't ever seen that. Not ever. I mean, maybe they're changing. Maybe a particular lender is changing their way, but I've helped. I couldn't tell you how many clients on modification. I haven't ever heard that. I just got one done with Chase with a client of mine in Connecticut 2 weeks ago. Wasn't even a mention about late pays. I mean, that's not even what they care. That has nothing to do with it. That's not even in the conversation. When you're getting a modification, that's a gift, right? Like, that's legitimately a gift. The lender doesn't have to do that. There's no requirement anymore. They had to offer it back when the market collapsed as part of Dodd-Frank, but they don't have to do that anymore. They just do it now because it's easier than taking the property back, right? And the whole process of actually having to foreclose and then throw people out, it's not a good look. So they offer it as a way to dilute the mitigation of it. But no, I haven't ever, and I don't think we'll ever see them be like, yeah, if you make 12 months of payments, we'll remove, the 2 years of late you had before. Plus, you don't really see, quite honestly, I mean, and this is across the board.
Okay. You
don't really see primary creditors do that, where they make concessions on reporting lates and stuff, unless it's like a good, like one late here or there, like we've talked about in the past. If you've had a really long relationship, you don't really see them manipulate the reporting system like that. You see collection companies do it because they're not held to the same regard. But if you're a major creditor and you're just wiping out years and years of late, right? You're kind of compromising the credibility of it, right? As a whole. So, I mean, you just don't see that though either. You don't. That's why you don't see primary creditors do pay for deletions. You won't ever see that happen. You won't ever see Discover Bank do a pay to delete when you're in collection with them. You just won't see it. Correct. You'll see potentially, in a very small scenario, Portfolio Recovery, who they sell it to if they charge it off, correct, potentially do a pay for delete. But you won't ever see Discover. You won't see Capital One. Correct. You won't ever see the primary guys do it. But no, to answer your question, no, not to my knowledge. Okay. Not that I've ever seen.
Okay, so here, Marsha again. Do I need to pay my 4 medical payments off at one time, or would it be to my advantage to spread the payments out?
It has no bearing because it's going to have no bearing. I don't know. I'm not trying to be rude, but I don't know how else to say it.
Well,
if you pay,
that's like doing a debt settlement, right? Where your debt is late 3, 4 months, 5 months, and the next thing you know, you get into a debt settlement program, and the next thing you know, you're going to have bad credit for another 24 months.
Yeah, the only common denominator there is you're just trying to close a debt. But in her situation, it doesn't matter if you pay him all at once or if you stagger it, because once it reports, it's not going to assist you. There's no need to overanalyze it. It's not going to do anything for you from a scoring perspective, from an anything perspective.
Well, from a perspective
other than to stop the bleeding of it. What's that?
From a perspective that she's debt free once she pays this off.
No, I know, but we're talking, this conversation, this entire podcast is about scoring, right? And getting your credit report better. Correct. If you're just trying to eliminate debt, then I fully encourage that, right? Then yeah, pay them all at once. If you got the liquidity, knock it out. But the way she posed the question made it seem as though she thought that it would assist if she did it a certain way in scoring. And there's going to be no scoring benefit. I don't know how else to say it. You're going to get zero scoring benefit from paying them off. None.
On top of
no
that,
assistance there.
On top of that, she says, so she's been using Creditkarma and CreditWise for like 4 years, she says.
That's I mean, look, again, you're not even gonna get points on Creditkarma when you pay a collection. So
yeah,
when you pay a collection off, it's going to be the same. They don't even give you any brownie points for doing that. So as out of plumb as that scoring model has a tendency to beat, you're still not going to get them there. So again, we're all about, financial prowess and doing the right thing and everything like that. So paying your bills, I think, is good. If there's an assumption that there's some sort of a reward for doing that, in the instance that she's describing, there's not going to be from the report. It just means it's going to stop the bleeding. It's not going to be a debt that's going to linger out there and potentially get resold. And for all intents and purposes, she could always hire somebody at a later time, potentially remove it. But in the near term, when she pays it all off, it's not going to get her any closer to a different score or anything like that. I assume there's 4 of them. That's got to be leaning on her score relatively significantly, depending on how broad her overall file is. So,
correct.
She's
disappointed because she's been using CreditWise and Creditkarma to, look at her credit. I mean, she came from a bankruptcy.
But hold on, just to be clear, hold on. I just want to back up for a second. CreditWise only shows TransUnion, to my understanding, on the free side.
Okay.
So if you're using CreditWise and it's just showing you TransUnion, and you're using Creditkarma and they're showing Equifax and TransUnion, that effectively means that you're looking at the same bureau 2 times. This is just another example where people can get confused. You're using 2 sites to look at one of the bureaus twice, and they shouldn't even deviate in a normal circumstance. So if she's seeing a different scoring, it goes back to what we talked about earlier, where you're seeing a significant deviation from your score on CreditWise and then your TransUnion score and your Creditkarma. That's saying things, and just lending to what we've been talking about the whole first half of this past.
Here's the thing, Marsha. Even if you still have those negatives and you saw your scores, she says, I can't win for losing, but I'm really trying. I had a 489 after bankruptcy back in 2011. Now I'm at 600. Here's the thing, Marsha. If you seeing that 600 from CreditWise and Creditkarma, it's probably lower than that. So it's probably best if you go to Experian.
Well, she said she's at 600 now, and if she filed BK in 11, all that stuff should have aged off by now, except for maybe the BK if she didn't work on it. Correct. Unless there's more stuff that's accumulated between 11 and now. So
understand this, John, because people don't. I know that we got into it before, but the bankruptcy is a public record, which is one thing. But accounts that were included in the bankruptcy, they have an age limit that were negative items. And the bankruptcy stays on your credit report for 10 years, especially Chapter 7. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's on there for 10 years in most places, correct. But that's not even where the points exist, though. So in most cases, and I don't want to we already talked about this in the bankruptcy cast, so if anybody wants to know, we go into a lot of depth about it. But where the points come from, everybody's psychologically stuck on the BK itself and the actual reporting of it, where it sits in the report. But the points that you lose as a result of the BK are all compiled in the accounts included in the BK. If you remove all the accounts included in the BK, you'll go into the BK scene, you'll still be in the 7s.
Correct.
Even if you just filed the BK 6 months ago, you'll still be in the 7s if you remove all the accounts associated with the BK. And obviously, you wouldn't go 9/10 of the way and not remove the BK too. I'm just giving an example that's where all the points, the negative points, sit on the accounts associated with the BK.
Yes.
It's not the BK reference itself, but I would suggest for her to maybe set up a free Experian, see where her score sits there, and I have a feeling it's gonna be different. But it sounds like she's brought it a long way. So I mean, maybe just a little more work can get her, depending on how off the 600 score is in either direction. But maybe just some more work and some time can get her up where she wants to be.
Okay. I got Alex Chu saying, I believe on Gizzy. He looks brown like me, like a Cuban guy, but looks more like Jesus to me. Oh man, wait till y'all see John. Pretty soon you're gonna see John. We're working on that. We're working on getting new equipment and better sound quality as well. This is all on the fly. This is all, everyone started doing podcasts, but then I said, you know what, John knows too much. And I need to put John online because he just knows a lot and it's beneficial. And John is not stingy with his knowledge. He really likes to help people. That's why I'm down with John. Okay. So.
I think the key, that the thing that it just drives me nuts is there's just such an unhealthy imbalance that exists in general fiscal knowledge that goes on in society. And I just think the thing that I say it on each one, but I mean it. I don't understand why leveling the playing field is a problem. Why they don't make a point of trying to level the playing field and give people the proper amount of knowledge. Let them make the right decision. I guarantee you there'll still be people that'll take 15% loans. I think there's certain people that they don't care. They see a shiny object and they'll take it. They don't care about the interest rate. They're very impulse-oriented human beings, and they just grab at what they can get. Yeah. I just think it's fair to give people all the facts and let them understand everything and every aspect of it so that they can make the decision that they make on their own accord, right? That they've arrived at with the right information. People still make bad decisions. Everybody makes bad decisions. But I mean, why not give them the right information in order to be able to make the right decision? If they make the wrong decision, then that's on them. Right now, they're giving consumers an excuse to blame it on someone else because they didn't have the right information. We'll give them the right information. I don't see what the downside is. That's why, that's why I love giving out information, because I think it's proper. Why not?
Correct.
I just don't understand why not.
Well, and in that case, Jay, Carol also asks, would you ever look at someone's credit and suggest bankruptcy is the better option than credit repair?
No, not unless it's a strategic scenario where they're trying to save a property or something like that, and they don't have a choice because it buys them time. But no, there's not a situation where I would, because we've seen, I mean, again, I'm not judging anybody, but on a couple occasions, in one particular instance, we had a client who had almost 100 negative accounts on one bureau, each bureau. It was close to 270, 280 total accounts we had to remove. They were almost entirely comprised of student loans, right? Private, public, broken out 150,000 different ways. That file took us a long time, right? A long time. Yes. But the reality of the situation is that
South Carolina file.
Right. And we've seen every possible situation you could possibly imagine.
Yes.
And every one of them is fixable. So why would I tell somebody, especially knowing the way the debt system rolls and how debts roll off and how they determine if they're going to go after somebody for a debt, the extent to which they go after people for debt, etc. Why would I advise somebody that the best decision would be to pay some guy $3,000, which is probably probably 3 times what we would charge, to do something that I mean, I just don't necessarily think is absolutely necessary. I just don't. I mean, if a lot of people do it because they just don't understand, I think. And I think a lot of people also do it because they just want to get out from underneath whatever problem they're in.
It's a stress factor.
Correct. Yeah. And it's understandable, right? If somebody's under a lot of pressure, they look for the easy exit. And I get it, right? And that can be an easy exit. But to answer the question, no, I wouldn't ever. Obviously, everybody has different psychological thresholds. Some people need to do that, but I wouldn't. Unless it's a strategic situation on a business or personal situation, I just wouldn't really see the need to do that.
Yeah, Carol. No, thank you for your question, Carol. A lot of people are learning, not only here on Facebook, but on YouTube. A lot of people are learning. But yeah, no, I never told people it's better you do bankruptcy. I always tell people that you can't even file for bankruptcy anymore like before. I mean, you need to qualify even to file bankruptcy.
Well, that was always. I mean, that's where bankruptcy fraud comes in. Bankruptcy is technically you're insolvent, so your liabilities exceed your assets, right? So that's effectively how you determine. You have to give the court a whole list of your assets to document all your liabilities, and if you lie, it's a felony. Right, and it's a very real thing. It's called bankruptcy fraud, and you get in a lot of trouble for it. But if they determine that all the stuff you provided was short, or that you're not truly insolvent, and it's going to be very difficult to make that determination. That's why on the 13s you see it's chapter 13 is just you restructuring the debt. Yes. You're going back to your creditors. You're not telling them they're not getting anything, but you're restructuring it over a period of time where they're getting paid. They're just going to get paid a diluted amount, but they're still going to get something, as opposed to a 7 where they're just discharging everything because the individual doesn't, they're not viable to be able to maintain that debt or service that debt. So I just don't personally see a reason why other than a strategic situation that they would need to do it. But again, I do understand the psychological element that people certain individuals go through that may not understand everything that's going on. It can be overwhelming, and they have a bankruptcy attorney across them that'll take on anything that'll just, in some cases, and just get them out from underneath it. And it's just that simple. So.
Okay, John. Well, $1 million question. So, what is the best credit monitoring? So, I have on the thumbnail, I have myfico.com. Is that a good credit monitoring site?
Yeah, I mean, I like my FICO. I mean, I'm not crazy about the site itself, but I like the fact that it gives all the different. By the way, it's the most expensive, right? So, I mean, it should be the best, but it gives all different scoring models. It gives different breakdowns for different types of credit, and tells you the exact formula that they're using. So it's by far and away the most detailed. It's also the most explanatory, even though it's not that explanatory. And it's a good, yeah. I mean, I think if somebody wanted to spend $40 or $50 a month, that's about what it is. I think that's probably the one I'll tell them to utilize. If most people's budgets start topping out around $30, $20 if they can, or less. So in that instance, I would always just tell them Experian. But yeah, I think my FICO is definitely best in show for a multitude of reasons, right? But it's just most people, it's far too expensive for them to sustain on a regular basis.
Correct. So we have also Experian.com.
Yeah, and that one I believe in, because it's still, look, I like the fact I'm going forward. We're constantly trying to find ways to save money for clients. So as a result of that, I think using Experian and it being free, and you can use the free Experian site where they give you a score, and you have the dispute portal at your access, plus you get all the accounts, I think is good. And I think, being as though it's free, you get a real bang for your buck. It's not some faulty cheeseball site. It's the same one that their paid site is. You're just getting only Experian there, and it's free. So, I mean, not many other ones offer that with, to that capacity. So I think you get a lot of bang for your buck there too, especially if you're just getting the free one. If you do the paid one, though, I mean, it's good. I don't think it's as good as my FICO, just in the depth and the understanding of it, but I think it's good.
Credit check total.
Credit check total is Experian.com. It's the same thing.
It's the same thing. Equifax.com.
I like their platform. But you can't dispute on the site anymore because the dispute portal is myequifax.com, which is a totally different site. And the scoring model is Beacon and it's extremely conservative. We literally used to pump clients through there back in the day because of how conservative the scores are, so that if they saw a high score there, they'd see a much higher score on a hard pull. But I'm not, because of the fact that you can't even dispute through there anymore, and because of just how uber conservative the scoring is, and how more exact we tried to be with the service and the scoring, I just prefer to not use it. But I don't think it's bad. I think the scoring model is just so conservative that, which, look, it is not a bad thing that it's conservative, because it obviously tempers people's expectations. I just think, as far as just overall general consistency, I think it's okay. I don't think it's great. I'd give it like a 6.
Okay. TransUnion.com.
2. If we're now rating on 1 to 10, since I just started doing that, they use a Vantage scoring model, which, just in case anybody wants to understand, a Vantage scoring formula is the counter to the FICO scoring model, right? The Vantage was made by Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian together, and it was their way of kind of going around FICO because they pay FICO, right?
Correct. So
they decided to come up with their own scenario, and it was called the Vantage score. Although nobody incorporates the Vantage score, it gets, it's mostly FICO-based models that get utilized, and they've been in litigation with FICO for like the last 5 years because FICO sued them or went after them when they came out with the Vantage scoring model. Now TransUnion uses that Vantage scoring model, and I'm just not a fan of the score. I'm not a fan of the site. I'm not a fan of the scoring model. I'm not a fan of any of it because I think it deviates from just normalcy. And if you're familiar with scores and risk rating the way I am, it deviates greatly from it because it's on a different. It goes up to like 900. So I mean, you're dealing on a totally different bed that you're dealing with in regards to the extremes of the actual scoring model. So it's going to be difficult, for that model to ever really catch wind unless something changes. But no, I don't like TransUnion.
Credit Sesame.
And by the way, hold on.
Okay,
by the way, TransUnion's not cheap either. It's not some cheap alternative. It's kind of it's
$30.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's $30, and then it's like another 30 You don't get a free update like you do with Experian.
Oh.
You have to pay extra to update the others as far as I know. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't use it a lot because I'm not fond of it, but every time a client comes to us with it, they're normally just trying to use TransUnion, but whenever they try and update all three, there's always an additional cost, and I don't ever see the free one incorporated. So just something to think about when you're picking. What was the last one you said? Credit
Sesame? Yeah.
That's just TransUnion.
That's just TransUnion. Yep.
So no.
No. I mean, if you want a quote, if you want us to review your file and give you a quote from any of these, the ones that we don't like, I mean, by far, we want to be cost efficient, and we know it's going to cost money. But here's the problem, Jay. I sent you an email. We came through for O'Brien Smith's brother-in-law, Traverse, right? I sent you an email.
I didn't know that was his brother.
Yeah, I sent you an email letting you know what are the credit scores, because we removed everything in the first 30 days. Now, if you see my videos on YouTube, you see, everything removed from a whole bunch of those videos. Oof, I have a whole bunch of those. So I'm telling John, but John was telling me that the people who start credit repair with us, they're not actively paying for credit monitoring because we're trying to be cost efficient. But if you want to see new credit scores, as far as when everything is removed, you have to pay for that. Because you got to pay.
For all three, you do, right? If you set up with the free Experian, it comes with a free score, like I said earlier. So that comes with it. But you're right. In most cases, yes, you're going to have to. That's one of the few free sites where it's a legitimate bureau-based site that you're getting a free score and a free report from. But yeah, for the most part. But Traverse didn't even ask. He didn't care. That was weird for me.
No, I know, but I wanted to make a video. I mean, can you explain to people the percentage of people who would get those type of results? Because everyone who contacts me, I saw 10-day result, I saw 3-week result, I saw 2 days result, and that happened to me too. And I'm like, there's only a 5 to 6% of the customers who get those fast results.
No, I would say on a scale of 100%, based on the amount of time, the people who get done in the first 30 days probably represent, I would say 5 to 10% of the overall bunch, right? Now that doesn't mean. There's plenty of situations where we may get done one bureau in the first round, and the other two may take a couple more disputes. It really depends. But, the sweet spot typically for us, based upon, all the years and the clients, is typically anywhere from 2 to 4 disputes. But whether we get it done sooner, it takes a little longer, obviously, but that's typically the sweet spot. Yeah, we've had clients who've gotten done in 2 or 3 hours before. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's true. It's not common. It represents a smaller multiplier of the 5 to 10%, but it happens. Yeah. I mean, it's just not the common situation. We're not going to come out the door and promise you the best, most ideal situation, most ideal expectation. A large part of this business, equally as important as actually being able to perform, is setting the psychological expectation of the client, right? Correct. Because the last thing you want to do is overpromise and underdeliver. That's anything in life. I mean, if you can underpromise and overdeliver, you look like a genius. If you can set an expectation and hit it on the nose, you also look like a genius. So, I mean, the last thing I want to do is look like a doofus by underpromising and over-delivering. So the last thing I'm going to do is give you the best case scenario to try and bring you in. If in fact the average, based on almost 10,000 clients in 10 years, is somewhere in 2 to 4 disputes for us. So that's typically where it breaks down. Some people take a little longer. Some people get done sooner. But that's normally right around our sweet spot, based on all the years we've been doing this and an average file scenario.
Correct, guys. Okay, we got into the oil prices right in the beginning, right, Jay?
Yeah.
Okay, so no more questions. Again, this podcast came through because of a situation we have with the customer about Creditkarma. So we don't advise, if you are going to start credit repair process, to do anything with Creditkarma. Don't go by what they tell you. They will only confuse you.
Or I don't mean to interrupt you, but if you are going to use them, just discount it for what it is, right? For the things we're explaining to you. Meaning discount, meaning understand where its flaws are, and bob and weave accordingly. If you're going to use it, which we wouldn't advise using it, but if you're going to, take note of what we talked about earlier. Why, when accounts go into dispute, the scores drop, when your usage goes up, obviously. With any model, that scores are going to go down. But what happens is with this site, it goes, the scores drop exponentially, like anchor drop, right? Like avalanche drop, like so far excessive, it's not even realistic. So when you see stuff like that and you reference it against maybe a dispute and your credit ratio is going up, just know that the same way it swung in one direction, the minute it comes out of dispute or you get the ratios back in line, it's going to swing just as egregiously and aggressively back up.
Okay. So I have someone in Atlanta, Georgia, asking if we do inquiry removal. And I told them, you got 10 or 15 inquiries. That's really not a lot across all 3 bureaus. He's telling me he has 14 that he really needs removed. So I wrote, are these inquiries that he didn't get any financing on? Because a lot of people think that, that he says, I really need them removed. Well, what's the purpose of the removal? Why would someone think that I really need them removed? Is that more of a psychological thing?
Oh, for sure. But I mean, I think, because again, it goes back to what I said earlier. And this is an ideal example, right? I said earlier that people, when I was giving the example earlier in the cast, I was saying that, people don't recognize the scores move as a result of the usage, an inquiry here, an inquiry there. If he's got 14 across all 3 bureaus, in theory, if it's spread out evenly, that's four inquiries. That's nothing. It's doing nothing that's not hurting his scoring at all.
Correct.
Not even a small piece of it is hurting him, because it's well below the threshold of what they want to see in the course of a calendar year, and it's not heavy at all. And honestly, there shouldn't be situations. They're just. I understand that not everybody's our client as much as I want everybody to be our client. So if you know what you're doing, you shouldn't be wasting 14 inquiries, right? If that's you shouldn't have to waste 14 inquiries, right? Because you can really, in theory, if you're dealing with the right people, know what lenders pull what bureaus, and you can literally be strategic and tactical about your applications for finance, whether it be an auto loan, a credit card, etc., right? Like, you don't need to just, close your eyes and push apply like a lot of people do, and just get the inquiries off later. Why not just be tactical walking into it, right? Why apply to 30 different places like a car dealer and be reckless and sloppy like that, and then not talking about this guy that's asking the question, I'm speaking in general, and then have to turn around later and remove them, right? The ones that didn't work out as an application of credit, or didn't get approved for an application of credit. So that many inquiries, if it's spread out over all 3 bureaus, I'm telling him there's no way it's necessary. And if you pay somebody, he's going to learn the hard way. It's not going to jump his score if it's on all 3 bureaus.
Well, he also says some were approved, some were not approved. They're all for business.
Right. Of course. So the ones that were approved, if you dispute an open unsecured, an inquiry associated with an unsecured credit account, there's a good 50-50 chance, if not more now, that they're going to actually close the account. Because if you're disputing the validity of the inquiry, then effectively you're disputing the validity of the account.
Correct.
So if you go and you make that dispute that inquiry, you're running the risk of them closing the account you just established. Now, not only did you lose the inquiry, which is great, but you also lost the money, that liquidity you had as a result of opening the account. So, 14 doesn't sound like a lot to me.
Correct.
But let's just say 4 of them, of the 14, or 5, let's just do the math. Let's say half of them did result in credit. That's effectively taking you from 4 inquiries per bureau to 2 inquiries per bureau, which is effectively the same exact thing. So,
and also remember, Jay, if it's new credit that he has and he used it, his credit utilization, right? Once he makes payments on these,
he said it's on the business side, so it's not going to report.
Oh, that's right.
Unless it's a Capital One business card, which always reports on your personal, or a Discover business card, which always reports on your personal, which people don't realize and they find out after the fact.
Okay. Oh, so what's the credit score company you recommend? Oh, we recommend Experian.com. I mean, it's not that expensive. You want to go to my FICO, you want to pay $40 a month, $42 a month.
I think it's more than that.
It's more than that. Jeez.
It's expensive. Yeah, it's expensive. I mean, if you can get the bells and whistles and everything, but it gets up there cost wise for sure. It's not cheap. But yeah, I mean, I think dollars to donuts, dollar for dollar. I think Experian's probably, in my opinion, the best site. I like Identity IQ too. I just I think they're competitively priced, and I think that I don't mind their whole format either, and their whole ease of use. But I definitely favor Experian though.
Experian, you heard it. All right, still got some people here, but I think everyone got their question answered. I think we're good, Jay. We're coming up on an hour, 53 minutes, and another question came on right when we were about to leave. This is where the questions comes. How much do you charge to remove inquiries and remove a few negative accounts? And it's okay. Tyrone?
Yeah, everybody starts with a few negatives, so we look at the report. So we have to actually look at the report in order to be able to break everything down. We have a multiplier we use in determining the cost of the service. We don't just pull it out of thin air.
Correct.
And that's based on the total amount of negative accounts, etc. So we'd have to see the report. Feel free to email. We have to see the report, though, just to be clear. It can't just work off of, I got 2 accounts, what are you going to charge? Unfortunately, we're not even allowed to legally do that, I don't think. But, I mean, we have to see the report in order to be able to give you the real answers. Because
Oh, also, I didn't mention identity IQ, which a lot of people have identity IQ that we help out.
Yeah, that's what I just said.
Oh, you did? Oh, I didn't hear you.
Yeah, I said I like identity IQ. I don't like it as much as Experian, but I like their ease of. I like the report. I like the ease of use. I like it all.
Okay. All right, John. Thank you so much.
Wait, let me just explain the oil thing first, because we started it off, and I'm going to finish it with the oil thing.
About what?
Remember about the oil, the price of oil today? You asked me about that.
Yeah, did we talk about that? That's why I'm asking.
We did?
Did we?
No.
I thought because I said we were going to get into it later. Like, give a little economy breakdown on what does it mean for the economy when oil prices just go all the way down. But let's. I got another question.
I'll do this. It's almost 5 up, so I'll get this done in 5 minutes. Right? I'll give everybody the crash course understanding what happened today in oil. Right? Okay. So whenever oil dumps, it's a risk-off environment, meaning nobody likes to take risk, which is why you saw stocks along with it sell off. Right? Stocks are down like 600 points today. Anytime you see oil dump, it becomes a risk-off environment. The reason why it was so accelerated today, though, is right now there's no demand. Nobody's out driving their car, right? And as a result of that, there's a certain amount of supply that just naturally happens, whether it's in the United States with the shale market or it's overseas with Iran and Russia, et cetera. And there's already issues with them, which obviously drove the price down because there was a significant amount of demand. Here's the problem that's going on right now. The problem that's going on is that there's only when these oil contracts are sold in the futures market, right? And every month there's a new contract that comes up. Right. And after that period, if you still own that future, you have to take physical possession of it. So let's just say you bought 4 contracts, which effectively is 4 barrels of oil. Right. So in essence, what ends up happening is after that contract expires, if you still own that, you have to take ownership of 4 barrels of oil. That oil is substantiated somewhere. The problem is the reason why it dropped and went negative today on the May contract is there's nowhere else to store it. There's so much supply and no demand that everywhere that stores oil has been clogged up. That's how bad it's getting. That's how little oil is being used because people are all stuck at home. Correct. Nobody's traveling. We're the biggest consumption country in the world. And as a result of that, we're not using oil, which we typically use oil. China is another enormous user of oil. And they just came out of the situation we're getting ready to hopefully come out of, right? So there's so much building up that literally there's nowhere to store it. So they're literally paying. They went negative because they're literally paying people to take it for them. Oh, they had nowhere to put it. They're putting it on ships now to hold it. Well, how long is that going to last? Because then we roll into June. If the consumption doesn't pick up, it's going to roll into July. And it's going to be this isn't more than likely going to stop just because it's today. Unless the demand starts to pick up, you're going to see this situation continue to go on until people start using oil again. It's crazy. It's a crazy thought to think about that literally it's gotten to the point and there's so much supply of oil, even at a base case that they're dealing in right now with the cuts that went on, that there's nowhere else to store it. Typical places that are stored are all full. No more places. So it's driving these prices down. Watch the June contract tomorrow. I mean, there's one more day in the May contract. That'll probably get torched unless something comes up. June was already down a couple bucks today. It'll probably keep getting torched until that contract comes due in the middle of May. Who knows where that ends up? First time ever in history of the oil market that a contract closed down, much less down. Today closed down $38. That effectively means that they would pay somebody $38 to take each barrel of oil for them.
Oh my God!
Meaning it no longer becomes an asset; it becomes a liability on the May contract. It's crazy.
Well, that's a little economic breakdown of John, brought to you by GizzyCredit team.
Yeah.
John, but in your state, you opened up again, so you're about to start using that oil.
Yeah, I don't know if we're open up to here, man. I don't know where I heard that, but I mean, I heard DeSantis came out and he closed the schools.
I heard you opened up the beaches, and there a whole bunch of people were in the beach, like after it was opened up.
Yeah, I don't know about that, man. I go out and I still see people dressed up like Power Rangers. They're so suited up, man. So I don't know
Even in hot ass Florida.
Even in what?
Hot ass Florida.
Oh yeah, man. Oh yeah. I mean, people. I see people. I went and got me and my son went out to get ice cream yesterday, and somebody had like a riot mask on. You know those? I'm serious. You know those riot masks, the ones that like that they got the headband and it's like a big plexiglass bulletproof thing in the front. I mean, I'm telling you, it's everywhere. People are. This is why, and I don't want to prolong it too long, but this is why I say that the psychological imprint that this situation has left on society is not going to go away anytime soon. It's just not. I mean, when you have people going out dressed in masks like that and all kinds of stuff to be precautionary, riot gear and stuff. I mean, even if they come up, they tell people the economy's open, people aren't rushing out the door. I know they're not here. I know in there's a Target down the street and they won't let you go in there unless you have a mask on.
Oh, anywhere in Jersey, anywhere, you got to wear a mask.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I know down here they have the antibody testing. So you can get tested for that antibody. There's some places down here that offer that. I don't know if they have that everywhere, but now the question if that even works. So who knows, man? Who knows? Oh, conversation for another time.
Yes. All right, John. Thank you so much, everybody. Clap your hands for John. Thank you so much, John. We'll have another podcast for you guys next Monday. See what we figure out, what we're going to do. There's a lot of stuff. I want to get into frequently asked questions about credit repair because, we're getting more busy and busy, right? But at the same time, people ask us the same question over and over again. So when people...
Yeah, but you know what? You know what? A lot of those questions are like, what was it Carol asked today? It's questions they get from Facebook, and it ends up becoming, myth and stuff like that, right? I mean, I think it's good to go through that, but I think in essence we'll end up dispelling a lot of myths, which we end up doing anyway. But I just think that I'd love to get some ideas, that people have as far as questions that we can do, because we can talk on any topic related to credit and finance, Correct. So I'd love to hear people's ideas too.
Give me topics. But no, I do want to come up with a frequently asked questions, because I'm gonna make it into a Google Doc, and every time someone wants a credit repair quote, I'm gonna put it in the email so that people could see, the question. Your question is going to be asked or answered when you review that sheet, which is going to definitely make our job easier, because you're already going to know our answer for that question. And if anything, you just come, and if you want to feel more secure, I guess we can get on the phone. But, that question is going to be answered there. So you could just get started ASAP like that. But yeah, Jay, thank you so much. Everyone loves when you get down on stocks and how you break it down. So definitely. Thank you so much.
All right, you got it.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Yep.
Peace. Okay, mi gente. That's John. John's hilarious, right? He knows a lot. That's why I got him over here with you guys talking, because I'm not stingy with the knowledge. I want you guys to have a full understanding. And on top of that, I learned too, because I don't know. I put myself as a dummy, okay? I always place myself in a situation where I want to be the dummy in the room, because if there's someone that I can learn from, I want you to learn too. That's why you can't be stingy with the knowledge. And the more you put yourself out there like that, the more you're going to learn, and the more you listen as well. Okay, so let me see who else here. Okay, so good information, you guys. I'm undergoing services at the moment. Oh, Tamara, hey, T, what's good? Is it better to pay off store card that report high utilization and never use them? Yeah, hey, Tayshawn, those credit cards, retail cards like that, you gotta pay them off, bro. They come with a high ass interest rate. You don't want to be paying that for a long time. Let me see. So yeah, guys, trust and build. Listen, I had a good time today. Had a lot of people on Facebook, a lot of people on YouTube. So definitely, if you guys are interested more on getting a quote or whatever, just reach out to me by email. Everybody knows my email address. You can go to my website and put your information in there. But all is well. Please stay safe, because it's COVID-19 is still a real thing, and not a lot of people who start in credit repair, they have an understanding that they're gonna live through all this, okay? And they're staying safe, they're working, but at the same time, they're thinking 2 months, 3 months from now, they're gonna be able to get a home, get a new car, and of course, with our help, you're gonna achieve those goals. How many new accounts? Listen, today it's gonna be 2 hours that I'm already here. I gotta balance, gotta put my daughter to sleep. But definitely thank you so much for sticking on. And can you delete a collection item if it shows that it was paid off in 2014? Yes, of course. Anything from your credit report could be removed. Okay, Nilma? Okay, everybody, brown your hands up. Thank you. I'll see you later. Bendiciones. That's my jam. GizzyCredit. Anything you want to do to get it. Don't discount everything you'll regret it. You no longer got it. So put that GizzyCredit. Don't be scared. What you need is just a change of plan. Time is money, you know you get that cash. Just get it fast, get it fast.